and see if my computer is going to behave. So just to make sure, the webinar we're talking about today is how to elevate your brand to a strategic plan. So about 10 years ago, I got asked to do a workshop on personal branding. And so I set about, because I talk about branding a lot in marketing, that's an area I know pretty well. And so this concept of a personal brand was kind of interesting to me. And I did some work to figure out more about it. And I did this workshop and it went over really well. People seemed to like it. I used this information in one of my classes still. And then back in 2020, I was putting together a series of workshops on how professionals can better position themselves to be promoted. And so I started working on career development. And then it kind of hit me that the two pieces of this puzzle kind of need to fit together. And so I crafted this workshop, which I've done a couple of times now, and people seem to like it. So I want to make sure that we are all on the same page. And so we're going to start with some definitions. Okay, let's see where we are. So who can tell me what a brand is? So pop something in the chat, raise your hand. What is a brand? We'll take all comers. What ideas do you have about what is a brand? And here I put up the best, highest valued brands in the United States to give you some examples. So what is a brand? What is it? Nobody has any ideas? A company's identity.
I found this on the web.
Whoops. Siri's going to help us out. We don't need Siri's help today. So a company's identity. I think possibly when Josie says identity, what she's really thinking about are the symbols and the logos and the names and the colors. And those certainly are part of a brand. Hopefully you guys all know that a brand actually started with cattle. Like you have a bunch of cattle in a field, it's hard to tell whose is whose. So you put a mark on them so that we can actually distinguish them. I love some of the other ideas that are here. It's a feeling you get when you see an image or a name. It's a name or word that's associated with a collection of products or characteristics. It's something people can relate to. It's reputation. Yeah, it's all of those things. But the things I really want you to think about, and this holds for people as well as for companies, is a brand is really about a promise a company is making, and the expectations that people have because of those promises. So they talk to us, they tell us what we should expect. Over time, we come to expect them, kind of like that feeling. And then when it gets delivered on, it's reinforced. When it doesn't get delivered on, it's not reinforced, and it's a problem. And so creating a strong brand has been proven to be very effective for companies in terms of people giving them more slack when it comes to crises, in terms of prices that they can charge, in terms of loyalty and retention, and even stock price. So a brand can be very powerful for companies. But what we're going to talk to you about today is brands and people and how we can do that. So I want to pop a poll up here really quickly to see where you guys are in terms of brands. So let me see. I've got all these messages from Zoom and I'm having trouble finding this poll. So here it is. I'm going to launch this poll and let's see what your answers are. So where are you in terms of how you use a personal brand statement? Would you agree with the statement, personal brand? What is that? Or maybe I know I should have a personal brand statement, but I've not gotten around to it. Or maybe I'm in the middle of developing a personal brand statement, or maybe even I've had a personal brand statement for years. So where are we in our knowledge? I'll give you guys a couple minutes. About 3/4 of you have already participated. Thank you. I'm going to show you this results in just a second. Here we go. And I'm going to share the results. So where are we? We have a mix, right? So about 1/4 of us are like, I'm here to learn what a personal brand is, and I can't wait to figure out, or maybe I won't be so excited. I'm not sure yet. Nobody has had a personal brand statement for years. Okay, that is going to be the job I'm going to task you with at the end of this. You definitely need to work on that. And some folks are in the middle, and that's because it is innately hard. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why you should do it, where it leads you, but also we'll get to like, how can you start to attack this? Okay. So let me get rid of this poll so we can go on. So we're going to do the same thing that we talked about with companies, is thinking about you as a person. And a personal brand for you is important because it's going to be your promise to the marketplace, to others. It's a declaration of what you want to come to mind when others think of you, right? And that's really hard thing to do. Sometimes we just put ourselves out there and we haven't been strategic and thought about, well, how are we putting ourselves out there? But, people want to be able to know who you are, have expectations about you, and have you deliver those expectations. So we're going to talk a little bit about how do you set those expectations. It's really important for you to think about owning your own brand. It starts inside you. You do not want to pretend to be somebody else. You need to figure out who you are and what you want others to know about you, because it's you. You're going to wear this. Now, this is a bit of a discovery process, and it can take time. And that's why I think, some folks are in the process and not quite there yet. But it's really important for you to think about who you are and owning that. And once you own it, there's things that you can do to help it be something that other people readily appreciate and recognize. The other important thing to think about is that if you don't own your brand, it's being created anyway. You just don't own it. So I'll give you the example. When I first started working on my personal brand, when I had this workshop over a decade ago, I Googled myself. And you know what I discovered is that I'm a very mediocre runner. Because I, at that time, was in triathlon training all the time, and I was running these local races, and all the content that showed up on Google was about my times in these running races. And trust me, on a good day, I'm a 10-minute miler. So I'm just a mediocre runner. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I do not want to be known as a mediocre runner. I need to have some content that is going to be there that helps establish who I am. And I have a marketing team that helps me with that. And so if you Google me today, I don't think you'll find very many running times, and you'll find some other things that I'm doing that I'm recognized for. And part of why I want you to think about this brand is because I also want you to think about where you're headed in the long run. Okay. So your career is not going to happen by accident. It's going to happen because of the things that you do and the choices that you make. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start backwards, and we're going to talk about a career plan and use that career plan to then think about, all right, what does your personal brand need to be about in order to accomplish that goal? Now, some of you are thinking, whoa. I don't know where I want to go. I mean, the future is a really long time. I agree with you. I don't know where I want to go. I figure I have a good decade left in the workforce. I've kind of accomplished the most that I can as a professor, and I'm still thinking about what is my pinnacle position in the next decade. But I want you to really stop and think, for the next 5 to 10 years, where do I want to go? And then you work backwards to try and figure out, well, if I want to be there, what has to happen in these intermediate steps? And you'll notice that I don't have this career as a ladder, because we know that people just don't go straight up a ladder. What they do is they bounce around from different positions, and you probably should move sideways some, because you're going to want to gain skills. And so what we're going to do is assess, what skills are you missing to get to that next position? And so when you are thinking about another position, what you want to think about is, what skills and capabilities am I building to where I ultimately ended up? So Janelle has posted in, thank you, Janelle, in the chat, a worksheet. It's a 2-page worksheet that you can use to follow along and think about how to do this. If you want a PDF of it, you'll need to.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
goodness gracious, Siri is really causing me troubles today. If you want a PDF of that, you're going to have to email me at mksaxton@iu.edu or Janelle at Sissel, IAUPUI. She put it in the chat, and we can email it to you after this. All right. And so this is where we're going to head, but we need to think a little bit about how do we figure this out? And so I'm going to use some examples that I pulled from LinkedIn. So it's amazing. When I first started my career, we didn't have LinkedIn. I couldn't look at what people's career paths were, but now we have LinkedIn, and this is a really great tool for us to understand what our potential career paths are. So I know this isn't going to apply to everybody, but I just picked one title in healthcare, well, really two titles in healthcare that maybe would give us some examples. And you'll have to think about what are the right titles for you in order to be able to think about where am I headed. So I used chief nursing officers. And of course, since I'm in Indianapolis, Lincoln gave me the results back in Indianapolis first. And so I pulled up these names. And so I've got like 5 names of chief nursing officers here in the broader Indianapolis area. So looking across these 5 profiles, is 5, 4. I can't count today. It's 4. All right. What are some common patterns that you notice just in these profiles that we got? We don't care about the details of anybody in particular. We just want to look and see what are some patterns that we notice right here. Anybody see any patterns? There's an alphabet soup. I love that term. The way I put it was they have a lot of initials behind their names, right? And so every one of those initials is some sort of credential. So what you're noticing is if you want to be a chief nursing officer, you are probably going to need some additional credentialing. Yes, they're all in Indianapolis, and that's because of where I was. I could do this on a national basis as well, and I would get slightly different results. But what else do you notice? I have a lot of connections with them. I work in healthcare. They have a lot of connections. I have a lot of connections with them, either, immediately or one person removed. That's really great too. I also noticed, let's call it out. They're all women. So it's not very many times I type chief anything, I get all women. But in this group, it tends to be all women. They do have professional photos, right? And they all look approachable and interesting and caring. I think that communicates some about who they are. Notice the variety. Some are chief nursing officers of a single hospital. Some are regional, and some even might be for an entire health system. So there's chief nursing officer can be a lot of different designations. Now I'm going to take their names off and we're going to look at some of their profiles in a little more detail. And again, I want you to look for patterns. What are the things that you see here as we go? And I started just kind of basically in order. So here is a CNO of a large local system. We can see the kinds of roles that this person has had. So they've only had the chief nursing officer role for the last 3 or 4 years. Started out as a trauma program manager, moved up to service line executive. Trauma is a theme here, and eventually advanced practice care and chief nursing officer, et cetera, right? This person has about 19 years experience. They have a bachelor's degree in nursing. Really, that's a BS. And then they also have a master's degree in nursing. It's not an MBA, sorry about that. But so you see a bachelor's and a master's degree. So they've gotten some advanced education. That points back to the alphabet soup that we talked about. Now, this person's profile is pretty, it's not got a lot of flourishes. It's pretty specific and not wholly detailed. They don't have any skills per se that they've listed. Now, that's another tool in LinkedIn that we can use to try and communicate to others about what we think we're good at. And you'd want to do that after you establish your personal brand. So here's another CNO for a local hospital. Again, notice that they started in North Carolina, got to Cincinnati, and then came to Indianapolis. So this looks like a series of moves up that sometimes maybe they move for other reasons, but maybe they moved for the job. So maybe being open to relocating for a job might be important. I don't know for sure. I want to look at some more profiles. This person has 13 years experience that we can see. They also have multiple degrees. Notice they have a bachelor's of science in nursing, a master's of science in nursing, and then the DNP, the doctor of nursing practice. So that's a lot of graduate experience over time. What we don't see here is what were the points at which they got those degrees, but they definitely have multiple degrees. This person listed some of their skills. And so it's interesting to see, well, what do you need to be known for? And these are pretty broad: healthcare management, hospitals, healthcare, nursing. You get some specificity kind of down in the fourth or the fifth skill around clinical research. So now we have a little more insight into this person and the path that they might have taken. Here is another. So I started looking at chief operating officers, thinking that maybe that would be a title that would give me some more nuances. And we have someone who has spent their entire career in a single health system and moved up through that health system. Now, I bet between 1997 and 2019, that's 22 years, they had a lot of different roles. We don't have a lot of detail on those roles. So we sometimes hope that we have a little more detail that we can look at. So this person was also a BSN and along the way got their MBA. So you'll see that some people will get all advanced degrees in care management, and some people will get advanced degrees that might be in like an MBA or an MHA. But they're all getting some sort of advanced degrees. And the timing of that would be kind of interesting if we had more details. Again, skills, fairly broad: healthcare management, healthcare hospitals. Now we see some of the IT side of things. So healthcare information technology and EMR, and which it really fits with a COO role, right? If you're going to manage the operations, you need to know the tools that are used for us to look at operational effectiveness. So it makes good sense. Here's another chief operating officer of an entire system. This person has a slightly different role. They're not currently in the Indianapolis area. So I did broaden my search a little bit. What I noticed, however, is they started out in Bloomington with a bachelor's degree in biology. And what's interesting is that there are 4 years here between their 2 degrees. And the second set of degrees they got was both the MHA and the MBA. So we don't really know what this person did in these 4 years, but we can see that after they got their degree, they have had a very strategic series of roles in healthcare, starting in an administrative role, managing projects, and then working their way up. And it looks like they were willing to change where they were located. So they were in Indiana, and then Florida, and then Georgia, and then now in Richmond, Virginia. So again, we are beginning to see this pattern of possibly moving from location to location in order to accomplish your career goals. This person did it the fastest. So this makes me think that this person had a real strategy going into it in terms of thinking about what roles they wanted and how they were going to do it. It could take 9 years. The most that we saw was about 22, 23 years. So it's definitely not a short-term play, but it's a long-term play, thinking about, well, what those boxes, what positions do I need? And what we're going to talk about is backing into then what skills and competencies do I need in order to be good for that role. Now, I did this in healthcare. I've done it in marketing. I've done it in graphic design. I've done it in IT. I mean, it's the same thing. You go into LinkedIn, you look on a job title, you start looking for typical people that are popping up. You can change the geography. You start to accumulate data and look at the patterns that you see in terms of the types of roles, the amount of time they take, the education they have. Click through, look at the skills. What do you have to be known for along the way if this is the job role that you want? Again, here are this person's skills, and we see healthcare management, healthcare. We've got that healthcare IT, strategic planning, and interestingly, physician relationships. So they're, like I said, you'll see a very common broad set in those first 4 skills, 3 or 4 skills. And then we see like what the specialization. So there's What I really like about this kind of information is it shows that there's multiple paths. There's not just one way to do it. There's multiple ways up through this organization if you want to make healthcare your specialty. Now, we could do this for physicians and look at the kind of training and the roles that different physicians take. It could be done in any industry and any job title. All right. So now we kind of get a sense of the path of where people are going. We get a sense of what skills need to be built. We get a sense of what kind of education might be required. And you can see there's not just one path to education, there's multiple paths to education. So we know the bucket and basket of things that have to be accomplished. So now is when you start to look at yourself and say to yourself, well, what am I really good at? What is my personal brand going to be about? I have a whole multi-hour workshop on a personal brand. If that's something that's interesting to you and you want to dig into this deeper, Janelle put my email in here. I'm happy to send you a workbook that walks you through all the steps of figuring these things out. It's about a dozen pages. I'm going to just kind of highlight it at the highest level. So the most important thing, and either you can know this already, or you can work through the rest of the aspects and come back to it, is your purpose. Why are you here? Why do you do the things that you do? What is the thing that drives you to have an effect on the world? Ultimately, that's what we need to know, because that career trajectory wants to fall in line with what you see as your purpose. Along the way, we're going to talk about some different strengths you have. And so one of those strengths, it's really important to think about when you are thinking about your own personal brand, is passion. Things that you love to do. You don't want to be known for things that you hate. You want to be known for things that you love to do. So I always think about these as the things that you'd get up on at 8 a.m. on a Saturday when you could sleep in to go do. Things that you do even when you aren't paid. Those are going to be your passions. Okay. Next, we need to look and see your mission. This is what the world needs from you. If you take what you love to do and what the world needs, that is going to give you a good part about your motivations. And the next set are your real strengths, things that you are good at, that you get paid for, and things that you are good at, that you're just good at. It doesn't matter whether you get paid. So there's things you love to do, things you're good at, things you get paid for, and what the world needs from you. And when you put all those things together, your purpose usually comes out. All right. Like I said, this is a difficult process. This isn't something you just sit down and do in a half an hour. When I work with my students in class on this, they start maybe about 4 weeks into a 12-week quarter, and they come back and they revisit it. They get to a draft, and then they spend the next couple of months kind of working through that draft, seeing what feels good. And it's something that, is constantly evolving. But the way that this all comes about is ultimately you're going to write a personal brand statement where you take all those ideas that you just came up with and you create one sentence, a sentence that a 12-year-old could understand, and a sentence that you can recite from memory at gunpoint. Well, let's hope not the gunpoint, but let's just say memory. All right. And so these are some examples. You don't have to use any of these, but this might be a place to start. So when we know what your strengths are, right, your vocation and avocation, that helps you know, I use my blank and blank for blank. This gets to your mission, right? Known for my strength, using these strengths, I do this by providing that. Through my strengths, I do this when I serve these people. So lots of different ways that you can get to that statement. And you don't have to use any of these. You can use these as a starting place. You could try all of them. Typically what I find when the first time people do this, they have too much content. By the time they get the statement written, they've got about 12 ideas in there. You've got to get it pared down to 4 or 5 ideas because you just cannot be good at 12 different things, and it confuses people. So 3 to 5 is sort of your ideal that you want to include in here. I'll give you my example. I'm a marketing strategy professor who believes marketers should make data-driven decisions by blending the art and science of marketing, right? So I'm not trying to be ambiguous about it. Marketing strategy, that's where I'm at. That's what I like to do. I'm a professor. There's no other vocation I want. I'm going to be paid for being a professor. But what you see here, I mean, what's your immediate reaction here? Is this anything confusing? What do you think are some of the skills that I might have or that I think I have? Oh, she puts you on the spot. It's so difficult to evaluate somebody else's ideas, right? So how many people think that art and science are a contradiction? So thank you, Mancy. Good at data. You're right. I am known for data. I have a PhD in statistical analysis as a minor, in addition to marketing. Yep, I leverage data. Nice job. You think art and science go together well. Sometimes people tell me that's a contradiction, right? I think they need to go together well. So I don't want to just be all intuition and I don't want to be all data. I want to see that the data and the intuition come together because I think they create a greater whole. So it won't surprise you that I teach courses like marketing analytics or digital marketing or marketing strategy or market research, right? These would be all classes that you might expect that I would teach and that I have taught. If you work through the workbook, we're not going to start with just your personal brand statement. We're also going to want to have this one-page summary of all the things that make you great. So when I look at my strengths, I'm very creative, I'm analytical, I'm very straightforward. That's that science part. You know, when you got the data, sometimes it's hard to angle things in a soft way. I'm very motivated and very persevering. I'm kind of like a bulldog sometimes, I might be said. My purpose is to help people better leverage data and decision-making so they are more successful. My mission is a world where everyone can achieve their best potential. Over the last 5 years, I have been really focused on fairness here and making sure that everybody has an equal opportunity to accomplish their best. That's been really a passion for me. So when you've got something like this, it makes it really easy to have conversations with your boss, right? So my boss frequently will come to me and he'll say, hey, Kim, could you go do blah, blah, blah? And I say, oh, boss, I'm happy to talk about that. But can you help me understand how it helps accomplish my personal brand? Like how will we be developing my skills or leveraging my skills, the things I want to be known for in order to do this? And sometimes it's caused a pause. And he said, you know what? You're right. I shouldn't ask you to do this. Sometimes it's been like, oh, no, this is in the sweet spot. You definitely should move forward with this. So it can be very helpful in terms of thinking about what types of projects you work on, what types of organizations you get involved with, and all of those things. Once you have this personal brand summary, then you're going to want to go to the next step. That part is you discovering who you are and declaring a strategy. The next part is about executing that strategy by updating things, making sure your headshot is commensurate with what you say you want to do, updating your bio, your resume, how you seek out mentors, all of those kinds of things. I often tell this story. So if you've heard it before, I apologize that at one point when I was working in a pharmaceutical company, I was known as the data person and I was very sciencey seeming and bringing new analytical tools to the organization. And what people don't know is that I have a passion, a hobby around collecting animation art, meaning that I really like Mickey Mouse. So one day I wear these earrings and one was Mickey Mouse and one was Minnie Mouse. And literally in the first 10 minutes I was at work, someone came out to me and said, take those off. That doesn't look like you. I can't even talk to you while you have Mickey and Minnie Mouse in your ears. I was like, oh, that's funny. Noted. All right. When you have a personal brand, you also need to exude that personal brand. So for me, I started with my bio, and you can see my old intro I sound like a very boring professor. Kim Saxton is the Clinical Associate Professor of Marketing at Indiana University's Kelley School of Business. She holds a PhD and MBA in Marketing from Indiana University, as well as a BS in Management Science from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. She has 25 years experience in competitive intelligence, market research, marketing. She started a career in consulting, blah, blah, blah. She's got a bunch of papers that she's published, and I'm like already bored to tears. And so I changed this, and you see that I just even leveraged my personal brand statement. Kim Saxton is a marketing strategy professor who believes marketers should make data-driven decisions to improve their effectiveness. She came by her interest in data-driven decisions naturally with a bachelor's degree of science in marketing from MIT, reinforced by an MBA and a PhD in marketing from IU. She's published broadly on new data analysis techniques, effective advertising, and the impact of different kinds of promotions. So now people know what part of marketing excites me. At the same time, she believes data should be practical. Good marketers find a way to blend both the art and science to be successful. She continues to hone her skills as a successful marketer by working with local startups to help launch and expand their businesses. In her spare time, she uses her approach to practical data to train for endurance athletic events, including Ironman triathlon. So now if you Google my name, what do you think you're going to find? You're going to find publications on startups, publications on promotional effectiveness. You're going to find webinars on marketing and promotions and startups, because that's what I said I was going to do. And so that's what I went about trying to do. And that's what we want for you as well. Now we've got to put these two things together. We've got this idea of where you're headed in terms of your career, and we've got this idea of where you are now. And we know what skills and roles you need in between. So then your next step is to develop an action plan. You've got to identify what specific skills you're going to work on in each of your next roles, all the way up to your pinnacle role. We don't have to tackle these right away. We can start with our next role and start to think about what skills do you have? What skills are you missing? How are you going to go about building those skills? And then you can craft that action plan. So you identify the competencies that you need. Maybe in the case of we're thinking about a CNO, I need to get trained on clinical research, or I need to, I want my specialty to be physician relationships, or I want to be IT, healthcare IT. So what are the kinds of things I have to learn about? Where am I going to get those skills? Is there a project I can volunteer for? Is there a nonprofit I can help? Are there classes I need to take? Do I need to change positions? You want to start to think about how am I going to get those competencies, and how am I going to demonstrate those competencies, and then put in a plan to make those things happen. As you start to make those things happen, you're going to see that more opportunities are going to become available for you. You're going to start to be known for what you want to be known for, right? Remember, it's a declaration of what others should expect. So eventually you should become a thought leader on the things that you want to do. Now, I made this sound really easy. It's not really easy. It takes time. You've got to figure out who you are, right? Your personal brand statement and your brand summary. You've got to think about where you're going. And then you've got to think about what the pieces of the puzzle that need to be connected in between in order to get you there. So I've given you a lot to think about. They got the one page that Janelle posted and that we can also email you. You also have the personal brand workbook to help you walk through the steps. And we're happy to email those as well. But I really want you to think about, how are you going to get to the top? Everybody can rise to a top. What's your top, and what's the path that you need to get there so that you can be recognized as a thought leader on the things that you want to be known for? All right. Didn't get too many questions up until now. I promised you 30 minutes and we're just over 30 minutes. So now's a good time for questions. Who's got some questions? I know I covered a lot of ground. All right, I'll tell you a question I frequently get. So my persona at work is really different from my persona at home and in nonprofits that I work for. So is it okay to have two personal brand statements? What do you guys think? Is it okay to have two personal brand statements? What do you think?
Maybe.
Maybe. I
Maybe it just
think,
depends what you're doing with those brand statements.
right. Could you say more about that, Megan? I'm gonna put you on the spot a little more.
I mean, I like to think of myself at work as like a pretty professional human and trying to, you know, act in a certain way, but I think outside of work, I'm a completely different person. I don't know. I'm not good at explaining this. I'm going to defer to, let's give it to Thora because her face is on there. Maybe she has something to say.
I was actually thinking of asking that question, Kim, because I feel that a persona can develop as well in different directions. And you might start off with your initial description, and then you deviate from that, and you at the same time continue with some of the other issues that you or topics that you wanted to continue with. And so I believe there are definitely possibilities of two different personas.
Yeah, I think there are possibilities. And I can tell you personally, I use Facebook very differently from LinkedIn. So I use Facebook for my personal things, and I use LinkedIn for my professional things. But I think that it's really difficult to be two different people. I mean, that's what we call schizophrenics, right? And so think about yourself. If you're trying to be expert on some things in this domain, an expert on some things in that domain, it's very possible that they get intertwined in a way that you didn't really want. So I would encourage you to think about one area the most, or as someone posted, if they go together, that's fine. For example, many of you don't know, I love to take photographs. I've done a lot of training on how to take photographs, and my house is full of pictures that I've taken. Does that fit with my data? Sort of. I use data as I learn my photography skills. And I didn't just start taking pictures, right? I went and learned how to take pictures because I thought that was really important to do. So I don't consider, the photography part a very important part of my personal brand. But I do consider it kind of important in my personal brand, if you will, my personal persona. And I'm known in the family for the pictures that I take. So I think, it's hard to have two completely different things. And it's really hard to excel at two completely different things at the same time. If they have touch points, I think that can work. And thinking about how you bring those touch points together, thinking about how those differences make you even more special in the other domain. So what is it on your personal domain that makes you more special in your professional domain? What is it in your professional domain that makes you more special in your personal domain? Having really strong linkages between them, I think would be important. It'd be hard to be very different in those two. Oh, so a great question was asked. How do we go about publishing? I'm a blogger of technical articles, and how do I take it to the next level? Well, you may or may not know that I have published a book, and let me tell you that publishing is its own full-time job. So there are ways to get recognized for your publishing, but really, we would have to take a lot of time. That's a very traditional digital marketing where you start in one domain and you spread across domains and you build a following, and you have constant information, and you can build a following, not just in TikTok for some funny 6-minute video, but for practical technical articles. So if you are interested in that, reach out to me separately, and we can have more of a conversation about publishing and how you move a blog to the next level. It's getting harder and harder because there's just so much content that's now available, but there are some paths that you can leverage in order to do that. Another great question. What other questions do you have? So also think about not just publishing. So publishing a blog and you're putting it on the web and people have to find it. How do you seek out speaking opportunities? How do you volunteer in organizations to do workshops for free, so you get to the point of doing workshops as a paid speaker? So there's lots of ways to take that expertise into another domain. Are there any additional resources you recommend to help organize and evaluate career objectives? Maybe where people don't know what they want to do yet. Yeah, that is really hard. As I said, sort of my way of doing it, of course, I like data and I like looking for patterns, is to look across LinkedIn jobs and see what's there. I don't think it's easy to know where you ultimately want to land. If you really want to work on the career development thing, I would say, again, reach out to me. I have a separate workbook for just a career development plan that has some books to read that can help point you at those resources. But often, if you can just think the next 5 years, the next 8 years, don't look all the way to the end. Maybe you have some notion of an end, and maybe that's like a really big wishful thinking BHAG. Then just look in the short term at the next 1 to 2 ideas, and that might help. Talk to mentors. I've had one evening MBA student who was really amazing at the job that she was doing, which is in the marketing realm. And then we grabbed coffee and we were talking, and she started telling me what she liked about marketing. And I said to her, well, that's not marketing, that's project management. That's a whole different field. And she started looking at that, and she got her next job at project management. And she's like, oh my gosh, I love this. So mentors can play a big role. Maybe reaching out to people who are in the roles that you want to have and talking to them about what their career is like, and then do like, oh, no, that isn't what I want to do. I mean, one of the things that's really nice about medical school is that those medical students go through a lot of different rotations in a lot of different fields, and they can see, oh, I don't like this, I do like this. I think those of us in more professional, not more professional, but in the traditional professional business careers, nobody lets us try on all these hats to see which one we like the most. So that's where mentors can be really helpful. Yes, there is a way to have your published articles and professional articles rise to the top of Google search. Again, that's a fairly complicated thing. And part of that is back to your personal brand, because if you know your personal brand, you can think about what keywords you want to be recognized for. And then you make sure that your keywords are in the articles that you're publishing. You want to make sure that those articles get connected across domains, so that you gain something called author rank. And that will help with Google searches as well. There's also just the volume. So for example, I've done 3 or 4 workshops 10 or 15 times. By the time you've done it 10 or 15 times, Google looks at it and goes, oh, they must really do this because it's in here a lot. So there's different strategies for depending on what it is you're wanting to accomplish. And again, reach out to me and we can talk about that offline. Well, those are a whole lot of questions. I really didn't take the time to go into how do we establish our thought leadership. So maybe that would be a workshop for another day that we can think about. But maybe I've given you, remember, nobody has a personal brand statement that they've been using for years. So your job, number 1, is going to be to start to think about how you make a difference in the world and write that personal brand statement while you're looking at what your career objectives could be. And don't forget, we have our graduate certificate in medical management to help you on your educational path. Maybe you're ready for some business training and you're in the healthcare area. We have a year-long program that'll get you the fundamentals. And you can reach out to us with any questions at any time. And with that, we're just about at 1 o'clock. And so if there's any last questions, happy to address them. If not, then we'll see you again in another month or so for another HealthBiz webinar where we show you the practical aspects of a business training. Talk to you guys later.